Last month, a CDC study found the number of teenagers in middle and high school who admitted to vaping is rising. Today, we learned teenagers who vape could be more addicted than first thought, with many admitting to smoking within minutes of just waking up. I want to be joined right now by psychiatrist Dr. Yalda Safai. Thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
So, Doctor, this is a very sad study because we're seeing more and more of our young kids or adolescents literally waking up, and within a few minutes of waking up, according to the study in this medical journal, they are vaping. What are we finding right now?
The same study also showed that about 77% of adolescents have said that their first nicotine-based product was an e-cigarette. Now, this is strategic marketing on the part of manufacturers of these products. Coming up with flavored-based tobacco products has been much more appealing to adolescents and teenagers than your traditional cigarettes. Also, it's really important to note here that e-cigarettes contain a form of nicotine called protonated nicotine. It is a lot easier to inhale. It's a lot less harsh than your traditional cigarette. So for a tobacco naive person, e-cigarettes have much more appeal because it's just easier to use. So now, some tobacco-based products, some e-cigarettes have higher concentrations of nicotine, and a lot of regulations have came into place to try to limit the amount of concentration of nicotine in these products. They have gone as far to try to ban flavor-based tobacco products, but nothing has been done to regulate the form of nicotine used in these e-cigarettes, which makes it so much more appeal to teenagers and adolescents.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you can imagine the different flavors, much more appealing, you're right, than the traditional. Yeah. But let's talk about the addictive nature, because are we raising kids and adolescents who are now going to be addicts to nicotine? How addictive are these products?
Of course, actually, studies have shown adolescents that start smoking tobacco or using any tobacco-based product or nicotine-based product earlier in their teenagers have a higher risk of using other substances as they grow older. Now, we all know nicotine is extremely addictive. Now, it's even more hazardous on a developing brain. It impacts memory, it impacts learning, it even impacts impulse control and mood. So yes, like you mentioned, like we are looking at an epidemic of not only nicotine use, but other drugs down the line, because study after study has shown that doing nicotine-based products earlier in the adolescence can lead to other drugs down the line.
Dr. Safai, what would you say is the cause of all this? I know a lot of teenagers have had it really rough during COVID. A lot of them have experienced depression, anxiety with the lockdowns and whatnot, the interruptions to life. What would you say are some of the big factors that are leading to this spike and this new data that we're getting?
Yeah, so smoking nicotine increases a substance in your brain called dopamine. Dopamine feels good. It's the feel-good hormone. It lifts mood. It lifts depression. So during the pandemic, we were all in kind of we were all isolated. We were all struggling, like you said, with anxiety and depression. So trying nicotine-based products has lifted teenagers' mood. So it just, because of that mood-boosting property, it's more likely that they will continue using it even after they're out of quarantine and out of isolation.
Yeah, and what would you say to parents right now? Because obviously having teenagers already tough enough, but if you're a parent who knows that your child is vaping, what would you suggest for them to regulate this somehow and speak to some of the dangers of, a lot of the increased amount of nicotine use can have on the child?
It's interesting. Actually, the CDC reported that up to 40% of adolescents using e-cigarettes and vaping didn't even know that they contain nicotine. And these adolescents didn't even know nicotine is addictive. So I think the first step would be to educate your kids on exactly what it is they're using and educate them on their addictive potential. I think that's definitely a start.
And yeah, it is a sad reality that we're faced with, and we hope that we can educate more of those teenagers and parents as well. Dr. Yalda Safai, thank you so much for your expertise.
Thank you.